We often look at elections as this big national drama, a clash of big personalities, big ideas. But the real story, the true health of our democracy, isn't found in the headlines. It's written in the soil of a single constituency. So today, our work is to do a deep dive, a completely nonpartisan analysis of Kohima Town. We're not here to talk about who won or who lost. We're here to decode the system itself, the political economy that shapes life for the people who actually live there.
So let's focus in. We're talking about Kohima, the capital of Nagaland. And this place, it's more than just a seat of government. It's the ancestral home of the Angami Nagas. Their identity, their history, it's all woven into the political story of the state. What happens here in the heart of Angami land often sends signals. It's like a bellwether for what's happening all across the region. If you want to understand the future, you have to start by understanding this place.
So here's our game plan. It's pretty straightforward. First, we'll get to the heart of Kohima, the people, their political memory. Then we're going to look at the signals from the ground, the cold, hard numbers. From there, we'll dissect the anatomy of the political shift that's taken place. We'll do a proper forensic analysis. And then, and this is the important part, we move from diagnosis to prescription. We'll lay out a clear blueprint for what people-centric governance could look like and how to rebuild trust. Okay, to really get what's happening now, we have to start with the past. For a long, long time, Kohima Town was seen as a fortress, a political stronghold for the Naga People's Front, the NPF. And this wasn't just about winning an election. It was a deep expression of political identity. But even the strongest fortresses have foundations. And the ground underneath this one, well, it's been shifting for a while now.
The political DNA of this place is really coded by the Angami Naga community. They're the dominant group with these incredibly deep historical roots that have always been the bedrock of support for the NPF. Their collective feeling, their sentiment, has really driven political outcomes for decades. So here's the key point. When the dreams and aspirations of the Angami community start to change, especially between the older generation and the youth, the entire political landscape has no choice but to change with it.
And that brings us to the real friction point here. For decades, the main political conversation was all about the larger Naga political issue, a conversation about history, identity, sovereignty. But what happens when that grand story doesn't quite connect with the urgent, everyday reality of the people? What happens when a young person's biggest political issue is finding a job, or a family's biggest issue is getting clean drinking water, or when all a citizen wants is a safe road to travel on? All right, so let's shift gears from that context to the hard data. Because in political analysis, numbers aren't just statistics on a page. They are signals, direct, clear messages sent by the voters themselves. They tell a story of engagement, of apathy, of division, and of choice. Our job is to listen very carefully to what these numbers are telling us. Now look at this. This is the first really big clue. A drop in voter turnout from over 81% down to just about 62% in 10 years. That's not just a small dip. That is a massive signal. It points to a growing disillusionment, a feeling that the choices being offered just aren't compelling enough to get people out to vote. This is the math of apathy, and it changes everything. And this number right here, it shows just how competitive things have become. A winning margin of only 1,342 votes, that's razor thin. What it means is there's no overwhelming mandate for anyone. The constituency isn't a stronghold anymore. It's a battleground where every single vote counts. This tells you the seat is absolutely in play. Let's dig into this trend matrix a bit. You can see the NDPF at its peak right here in 2013 with a massive 63.8% of the vote. But then, look what happens. In 2018, the NDP-BJP alliance enters the picture. That's a strong regional party paired with a national ruling coalition, and the NDP vote gets squeezed. By 2023, the entire game has changed. This chart traces the slow erosion of a dominant party and the rise of a new power, all while people are voting less and less. So we've seen what happened in the numbers. Now let's get to the important part. Why did it happen? What are the real forces at play that caused such a big political shift? To understand that, we have to look past the election results and into the social and economic fabric of Kohima itself. And here's the disconnect, laid out plain and simple. The old story, the one centered on the macro Naga political solution, was the cornerstone of politics for generations. But for a new generation of voters, their daily reality is defined by totally different challenges. Their priorities are tangible, they're immediate. It's about a good job, it's about reliable roads and water, it's about seeing development in their own neighborhoods. The political conversation just hasn't kept up.
And this connects to something much deeper, a core constitutional value. The right to a life of dignity isn't some abstract idea. It becomes real when you have a way to earn a livelihood. It becomes real when you have access to clean water, to safe public infrastructure. And so, responsible political speech, it isn't just about broadcasting the same old slogans. It's about the duty to actually listen to these fundamental needs and then be held accountable for meeting them.
Now, this shift isn't happening in a vacuum. You've got these big external forces pushing on the situation. Politically, you have the dominance of the national NDA coalition, and that just changes the power dynamics. Economically, you have high youth unemployment and a real lack of infrastructure. Socially, there's that clear generational divide we talked about, and technologically, the rise of social media has completely changed how political conversations happen. So, with all that in mind, let's turn the lens inward. Let's do a proper forensic analysis of a legacy party like the NPF. This helps us understand its real capacity, or its lack of capacity, to adapt to these powerful new realities on the ground. This SWOT analysis is really telling. Look, the core strength is still there and it's undeniable. Those deep, irreplaceable roots in the Angami community, that is a powerful, powerful asset. But then you have these critical weaknesses, like the party cadre slowly fading away, and a public message that feels out of step with what voters are worried about today. The opportunity, it's crystal clear. Become the champion of these local civic issues. But the threat is just as clear, the powerful, well-funded NDA alliance. Okay, so we've done the diagnosis. Now it's time to talk about the prescription. Based on everything we've seen in the data and the analysis, what would a clear, actionable strategy to reconnect with the voters of Kohima Town and actually regain their trust? What would that look like? Right. The way forward isn't just one single fix. It has to be an integrated, four-faced approach. You can't just fix one thing and expect it to work. Real success demands a synchronized effort across all four of these fronts at the same time. A smart electoral strategy, a deep organizational revival, a total reinvention of the narrative, and a credible, concrete policy platform. First up, electoral strategy. It has to be data-driven and laser-focused. This means finding a candidate who really reflects what new voters want, someone credible, maybe younger, but still deeply rooted in the Anagami community. And the goal here isn't to win by a landslide. It's to use data to micro-target those specific polling stations where turnout was low and focus on mobilizing just the 1,500 to 2,000 votes you need to flip the seat. Second, you have to rebuild the party's muscle on the ground. That means going back to basics, getting those block-level committees active again, holding local mahala meetings, and getting young volunteers out there for real, door-to-door conversations. But you have to pair that old-school work with modern tools. A digital feedback loop so headquarters knows what's happening on the ground, and using data to make sure your limited resources are having the biggest possible impact. And as we talk about using data and technology, it's absolutely crucial to anchor this work in modern ethical values. Under frameworks like India's DPDP Act, the principles of privacy and consent are just not negotiable. Building political trust isn't just about the promises you make. It's about respecting every single voter as an individual and using their data only with a clear purpose and their explicit permission. Trust really begins with respect. Finally, the story you tell and the substance you offer have to be perfectly aligned. The new narrative has to connect the party's proud regional history with concrete promises of modern governance. And those promises, the policy platform, have to directly address the top three complaints of the people: jobs, roads, and water. The party has to reframe itself as a progressive force that can both protect local identity and deliver 21st century governance. And this is the proposed anchor for that new story. It's simple. It's local. It's powerful. It positions the party not as some force dictating from above, but as a vehicle for the people's own voice, their own aspirations. It's a slogan about service, not about power. A brilliant strategy on a whiteboard is completely meaningless without disciplined execution on the ground. So the final step in this whole blueprint is to translate this four-part doctrine into a concrete, time-bound plan of action. This 90-day win-back plan just shows you how it could be done. It's a phased approach designed to build momentum, step by step. You start 90 days out with a strategy summit, you launch your new candidate. At 60 days, you start the public rollout with town halls and local meetings. At 30 days, you ramp up with rallies and digital outreach. And it all leads to that final, crucial 7 days, with a peak
get out the vote operation to make sure every single supporter actually turns out? So we end with this question. The story of Kohima Town, it's not just about one constituency in Nagaland. It's a microcosm of a challenge that legacy regional parties are facing all across India. Can a party that was built on historical identity successfully reinvent itself to serve a new generation whose priorities have completely changed? The answer to that is going to define the next chapter of regional politics. If you want to become a people-centric leader and uplift your constituency, get in touch with blueprintstrategies.ai at mgr@blueprintstrategies.ai or call 080-4204-1602. Purpose Beyond Politics.